Welcome to the Big Four Accounting Firms podcast, brought to you by big4accountingfirms.com and the Big Four Accounting Firms YouTube channel. Before we get started, just wanted to remind everybody to support us if you have a chance or if you can. Even $1 helps, and we have a link in the description to a website called Buy Me a Coffee. It's just a way to donate to us and support us. Again, any amount is helpful so that we can keep putting out content. And there's also other ways for you to support us in the show notes to this podcast or on YouTube in the description. In today's episode, we're going to be speaking about layoffs again because just received word that KPMG did an additional 200 layoffs in the United States today. And this time, the layoffs were mainly focused on executive assistants, basically assistants to partners and groups. And when we covered KPMG layoffs last time, you remember there's 1,400 employees laid off. With these 200, now there's 1,600. And KPMG states that they have 35,000 employees in the United States. So they're slowly getting close to laying off about 5% of their workforce. And when they initially laid off those 1,400 employees, a lot of those were back office employees. So there's a lot of executive assistants and HR that was laid off. And this time it's more focused on executive assistants. So this is a pretty bad time for KPMG, and their global revenues will be coming out in December. So hopefully we'll get some more guidance on this. But I'm not sure because typically the Big Four like to paint those as a rosy picture. So I'm not sure how much they'll talk about layoffs around the globe. But Deloitte laid off 5% of their people in the US. So it's not amazing that KPMG is doing this. And KPMG just finished their fiscal year end on September 30th, 2020. So they're probably looking at those results and figuring out how to lay people off. And they're most likely focusing on consulting because consulting is the hardest hit across the globe. And as we saw yesterday, when we were talking about Deloitte and Deloitte UK's results, the results were down about 16%. So in some of these locations, the Big Four accounting firms are really seeing a hit to their revenue. And in certain areas of the US, the lockdown has been going on for a long time. So there's probably regions in the US that are hit harder than other regions and offices. And those offices are probably being hit hardest with layoffs, and also consulting within those offices is probably being hit the hardest. So again, we have the Big Four laying people off, continuing to lay people off. And if you're an executive assistant, then this is going to be a tough time for you, but you can still find work in other Big Four accounting firms. Obviously, don't focus on consulting, focus on tax and audit. And if you can't get a job in the Big Four accounting firms, in one of these back office areas, then you need to go into industry because public companies, and especially large public companies, are doing well right now. And even though the past 4 or 5 months have been really, really difficult, the economy is turning around. So I think the Big Four accounting firms in certain areas are going to be struggling. But I think the way the economy works is also changing. People are working virtually. And so I think there's opportunities out there. It seems a little bit gloomy, but I think the way people are working is shifting, and the industries that are succeeding are shifting as well. And you need to pivot into those areas. And also, if you're going to be working in the Big Four accounting firms, efficiency is key now. And they're going to be firing these executive assistants and moving them offshore to virtual executive assistants in other locations like India and in the Asia Pacific region as well. And so if you plan to keep your job, you need to be very efficient. You need to learn how to use these offshore executive assistants, but you also need to increase your skills in digital skills, learning things like Alteryx to make your workflows easier, because things that you might have been able to give to an executive assistant previously, like billing, partners are now going to expect you to do. And the Big Four accounting firms were already super high on efficiency because they made you be chargeable for 80% of your time, and they made you measure that constantly. And it's hard to say that a person can be 80% utilized without working a ton of hours, which they expect you to do. But now that they're laying people off, they're going to push even more efficiency onto their staff and executive assistants. So things are going to be a little bit more difficult. If you want to succeed during this time period, you're going to have to buy into the efficiency, increase your digital skills. And also we spoke about E&Y and their tech MBA. If you're at E&Y, then you need to take advantage of things like the E&Y tech MBA. You need to take advantage of these digital learning tools that the Big Four are providing in order to increase your skills and keep your job. Because if you buy into the Big Four's programs and you learn the skills to make yourself more efficient, then you're less likely to be laid off. But if you're doing the same thing you did prior year and you're hoping that's going to get you by in one of these industries that are hard hit, then you might get laid off. So that's the update for today. Stay up to date on all the Big Four news and Big Four layoffs. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast. We also have a layoff tracker, and I'll include the link to that in the show notes. So make sure to check that out. And also, if you could financially support us, there's a Buy Me a Coffee link in the show notes that you can use to contribute whatever amount that you can support us with. Thanks for listening.